Hello and welcome to Explore TBR, the channel dedicated to finding and exploring what remains of the historic Thailand-Burma Railway. In this video, we will be exploring the railway in the area around Nikke. Nikke was actually a Western mispronunciation of the local Thai name for the area, Nitte. The Allied POWs called the area Nikke, 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 and other similar names, but they all refer to this area around the Nikke Station. For the rest of the video, I'm going to call it Nikke as well. Located at the 282-kilometer mark along the railway, just before the Burmese border, Nikke was another of the 6 major stations along the line, with sidings, a Y for turning locomotives around, fuel and water supplies, and locomotive servicing facilities. This photo shows the Japanese plan of the railway at Nikke Station. You can see the many sidings and the prominent Y track for turning locomotives around, with 2 curved sidings to the north of the Y. These Japanese words translate into water siding, perhaps referring to water supplies for the locomotives, and gravel siding, perhaps a stockpile of ballast for use along the railway. If you want to explore the area around Nikke, it's going to be a long trip from Kanchanaburi. You'll need to follow Highway 323 all the way to Takanoon. Takanoon is where the dam was built, which submerged most of the next 70 kilometers or so of the railway under a new lake. At Takanoon, you need to make a right turn and keep going. The highway makes a long, windy detour through the mountainous terrain around the lake. Finally, at the north end of the lake, the Nikke railway station was located in this valley here. Realistically, it's too far for a day trip from Kanchanaburi. The best way would be to travel 240 kilometers up to the town of Sanklaburi first and find a place to stay. Sanklaburi is very near the Nikke area and also Songkharai and the 3 Pagodas Pass at the Burmese border, so you may want to stay a few days and explore all these areas. The Thailand-Burma Railway line coming down from Burma passed directly under the T-junction just outside of town. You can see the trace of the line here, passing the Shimo Songkharai camp, which was located here. I'll cover the Songkharai area in a separate video. The line continued south from here. Much of this area has just been exposed recently as the lake level dropped a lot in the last few years. Turning through this gap, which was later filled in with a road, the line passed again through this gap through an earth cutting. This creek is actually following the railway cutting. The line ran south for a short distance, then turned east towards Nikke Station, which lay in this valley here. The line then swung south, crossing the Ranti River here on a long high trestle, then turned east to climb the opposite bank of the valley. You can see the trace of the railway line again here. This part of the railway line is above lake level and is easily explorable from the lake shore here all the way to where it meets the highway around here. Let's have a look at the Japanese plan of the Nikke Station again. All of the former railway tracks are below the surface of the lake now, but not by much, and some of the unloading ramps along the sidings are visible depending on the lake level. Remember the Y here and those 2 curved sidings to the north, and this siding just south of the Y. These lines can sometimes be spotted on Google Maps, depending on the lake level at the time the satellite images were taken. This screenshot was taken from Google Maps a few years ago. You can clearly see the Y tracks just below the surface of the water here, leading to the curved sidings which are cut into the hillside just to the north. You can also make out the next siding track south of the Y. What you see here is an unloading ramp, earth ramps built up on either side of the track for unloading and loading the railway wagons. Here is another ramp just to the west on the track leading up to the Y. The main line curved down from the north, through the station and sidings at Nikke, then swung to the right along an embankment leading to the bridge across the Ranti River. You can see the deep water channel that was the river here. Across the river, the line swung to the left, climbing again, and now emerges from the water here. You can also see where a siding track branched off from the main line. This siding was likely used to hide locomotives in the jungle away from Allied bombing raids, which would have targeted the railway infrastructure and bridge at Nikke Station. So how do you get into this area to explore? From Sanklaburi town, go back south on Highway 323 around 17 kilometers to this point here. You can just see a small dirt road branching off from the west side of the highway. You'll see exact GPS coordinates on the map coming up in a minute. You can park on this dirt road. The railway line came up from Kanchanaburi and roughly follows the highway to this point, but where the road angles to the right, the railway line angled to the left. Nothing is visible under the jungle canopy on the satellite view, but the line ran due west here, through cuttings and across trestles. Here again you can see the trace of the line, as well as the siding track, which both descend into the lake. This clip shows how to get to the railway from the highway. Here we are looking south towards Kanchanaburi on Highway 323. This is the dirt road where you can park. That's my brother Brad again. Another big thanks to him for coming along and helping me on these trips. On the right-hand side of the dirt road, there is a path which drops down to the railway line. It's that easy. Here we are in the first cutting on this section of the line, which is curving to the left away from the road at this point. This older clip shows a little more of the cutting and line heading west. Apologies for the terrible video quality. This was taken many years ago with a pocket camera. Looking at the map for this hike now, the first rock cutting is around 85 meters long and 6 meters deep. Photo 1 was taken from the dirt road looking down into the cutting. Beyond this, there's a small embankment over a narrow gully, followed by a short cutting around 10 meters long and 6 meters deep. The end of this cutting marks the beginning of the first of two very long and high trestle bridges. The first bridge was 115 meters long and around 15 meters high, spanning a wide ravine. After a long climb up the other side of the ravine, the track continues on, cut into a ledge on the left side of the line for another 50 meters. Just beyond, there is a cutting through hard earth around 3 meters deep and 20 meters long. Photo 2 shows this cutting looking west. This is an old clip walking through this cutting. Again, apologies for the terrible video. The line is then built up on an embankment over a shallow gully around 100 meters across and then begins to curve to the left. The terrain flattens out briefly, then two large cuttings pass through earth and rock hills. The first about 80 meters long and 4 meters deep, curving to the left, and the second larger one is 130 meters long and 6 meters deep, curving to the right. Photo 3 was taken in the second cutting, looking west. Between the two cuttings, there was a very short bridge over a dry creek bed. Passing through another small cutting brings you to the embankment that leads up to the second large bridge, where the track swerves towards the right and nears the lake shore. My map, which was made some years ago, shows that there's an inlet from the lake which passes across this low spot. The level of the lake has gone down a lot since then, and you should be able to cross this gap without trouble, although it will likely be extremely overgrown. On the other side of the marsh, you will find a high embankment where the line continues on towards the lake. The track here is badly overgrown and difficult to follow. It passes through a low earth cutting around 2 meters deep for around 100 meters before reaching the switch to the siding. After emerging from the jungle, the railway line follows the shore of the lake. The railway is running steeply downhill here, turning to the left and descending quickly into the lake. Photo 4 was taken from shore looking across at the railway embankment as it descends into the water. Photo 5 was taken from a canoe looking back at the railway embankment as it drops below the water's surface. Below the surface of the water, the line then turned to the right, crossing the bridge over the Ranti River, and then turned left again to arrive at Nikke Station. Like I mentioned earlier, the level of the lake has dropped a lot since this map was made, and now more of the line is above water in this area. Links to the GPS locations are in the description below, and if you click on this link, Track into Lake, you'll see how far the water has since receded from this GPS point. This is not a long hike, only around 1.6 kilometers from the highway through to the lakeshore and as far back again, but it may be quite difficult depending on the jungle growth and time of the year. Conditions on the trail vary greatly, so plan for the worst and wear heavy clothes and tough shoes. Some sections of the hike may be quite swampy. There are a few places where falls are possible down steep banks. As always, be very careful when you're hiking. Know your limits and don't take risks. Bring a buddy, or if you're alone, let someone know exactly where you're going and when you expect to return. There's no food or water available here. You're pretty far out in the jungle, so you'll need to bring enough water and food if you need it. Like I've said many times before, this railway is a site of historic importance. Please don't take anything, and please don't leave any litter behind. Remember the thousands of people who died under appalling conditions constructing this railway, and treat what remains of it with the respect it deserves. So that's it. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you found this interesting or informative. If so, please give the video a like, and feel free to subscribe and check out other videos on different sections of the railway. And if you do get out here to Nikke to explore, let me know how it went in the comments below. I'd really like to hear from you. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.